DDG episode 172. My name is Dave Hunt, and I'm joined by Michael Swick.
How's it going, Dave? It's been a busy week, I think, right? Yeah, for me it has been. It's been busy the last 2-3 weeks.
Yeah, the weather has been stupid for me here. It was 85 degrees one day, and then
Did you get the 30 degrees the
and
day
then we got
after,
the snow.
we did over here?
Yeah, then we got snow. Yep.
Yeah, we got flurries for half hour a day after it was 80 degrees. Really stupid. I hate it.
Yeah. So, we are Digital Days Gaming. We are a weekly podcast that posts every Thursday at 6 a.m. Eastern Time on podcast services that you are subscribed to. So if you're subscribed to us, that's super helpful. If you can leave us a review, that's helpful as well. If you're able to leave a review with words, that is also great to help us move up the algorithms and stuff. So if you're able to,
help.
yeah,
Reviews
if you're able
so much.
to share the show at all, any sharing of the show is helpful. A review is the most helpful. And we live stream on Twitch, twitch.tv/digitaldaysgaming. Typically, Tuesday night or Wednesday night, just depending on what's been going on. Michael and myself are in discussion right now with his job change and my job change, the possibility of going to a more concreted day and time. And that time might be a little earlier in the evening, maybe 7:30, 8 o'clock Eastern time, somewhere around that time. There's a couple things that we're still working out, getting home from work, and making sure that we still have, a little bit of a personal life with our significant others, as well as eating. So.
Yeah, I just ate an entire dinner in about 10 minutes flat before recording.
So we are talking about, as we're getting near, I think, our 4-year anniversary soon, doing a little bit of a,
What are you buying me, Dave? What is the material for your...
I'll tell you what, I'll buy you a ticket to E3.
Okay, I'll take it. I mean, trip to California sounds good.
I said a ticket to E3.
Okay. Fine, it's an excuse. I'll just go over there and just record a video of me at the convention center.
Yeah. So if you want to watch us on Twitch, following on Twitch is free. Subscribing is an option as well. You can subscribe with your Twitch Prime account, or you can do just a regular subscription with your whatever bank account you set up with Twitch. Again, those Amazon auto subscriptions do not auto renew. But so if you could check that, even if we're not live, if you're listening to this in an audio format and you want to know the best way to support us, it's on Twitch. It's financially, that's the easiest, freest way for you to support us if you have Amazon, or you can just go to Patreon. So patreon.com/digitaldaysgaming and check out that. So with that, everything else to be part of the community is linked in the show notes. Facebook group, Discord, Twitter, all that stuff is in the show notes, as well as Patreon and Twitch are all there. So check out those. And we're going to jump right into the news.
Yeah, for a bit of news this week. Sorry, I'm adjusting my light because I'm very dark right now with my office setup right now. So news, a lot of little news stories, nothing major. The first thing is going to be a disappointment. That was the Nintendo Indie World. They did a 20-minute presentation today. I forgot to remind Dave that this existed, so I don't know if Dave got a chance to watch it. But
somebody posted it in Discord today too. So
yeah. But there wasn't much happening there. So the only two things are things that interest me, and I think people in our community. Bomb Rush Cyberpunk is releasing August 18th for Switch and PC. Other platforms are coming at a later date. This is just funny because we were just talking about this game last week with the Jet Set Radio news. So that game's coming this summer. Perfect time for indie games like that to come out is the summertime. And then the other major announcement is Oxenfree 2 is coming to everything but Xbox on July 12th. This is obviously a sequel to Oxenfree, one of my favorite games of last generation in terms of indie games. And this is probably Netflix's biggest release because they did acquire the studio and help fund this sequel. So it's coming to Netflix, PC, Mac, PS4, PS5, Switch, but no Xbox. And this is kind of a theme for a lot of this stuff. A lot of indie games were announced today that are coming to everything but Xbox, which it isn't a Sony thing or a Nintendo thing. It just seems like people are just like, they just don't see it viable.
I personally think it's a Game Pass thing. I think Microsoft, if they're gonna, do a deal with an indie game, they want it on Game Pass. They want to bolster their library, and if they don't want to put it on Game Pass in any way, shape, or form, Microsoft's like, oh, okay, we're not really interested in it being on our platform. And then the counterpart to it is, I've seen a bunch this week. The hardware sales aren't there for Xbox Series at all. The units, so it's not like the indie dev is like that devastated. So.
Yeah, it's not viable, or they're just hoping if they hold out just a little bit that they'll get that offer for Game Pass. And
no, I think it's maybe the indie devs don't want it on Game Pass. They want to see how many units they can sell, and Xbox wants it on Game Pass. That's what I think is going on.
And then once they get those sales, that's when they're like, "We'll take your free check at Microsoft."
Correct. Yeah, so I could see this coming as an example. I could see Oxenfree hitting like in 6 months or 9 months and hitting Xbox via Game Pass. Sure, it'll be for sale, but at that point in time, they just want to, especially if if any of these games, Bomb Rush or Oxenfree or anything else that was announced there that, to your point, nothing else major, but if they start doing well, then Microsoft will use it as a PR thing to say, look, we got this now, and it's on Game Pass. So
like we're finally bringing this hit game to you for free, heavy quotes on free. Yeah. That would be pretty sound marketing from them, and something they've done in the past in terms of bringing certain games over. The only other thing of note was Video Game Donkey. If you're familiar with his YouTube channel, his first game that he's publishing, Animal Well, is coming this winter. I like Donkey. I don't know if you've seen his YouTube channel.
I have no idea who he is. So.
One of the few YouTubers that I will actually watch. Okay.
You've got some pretty high standard for content creators, so he's got to be pretty good.
You know what? I would say 7 out of 10 in terms of the output there. So they're coming with a game soon, but that was it really for the indie world. I'm sure there's something that someone was hoping was there, or I know a lot of people are hoping for Silksong to show up there, but I think Silksong's bigger than the indie showcase. Yes, it is an indie game, but that is something that Nintendo would save for their full direct.
Yeah.
There's a few indie games that have grown past the indie world presentation. All right, Dave, we have some acquisitions. Nothing crazy. Epic Games has acquired Aquarius, I believe how you pronounce it. It's a Brazilian studio, and they are developers of Horizon Chase, which is a arcade racing game. Kind of looks like a Cruising World type game. I believe it's really popular on the Switch. I always see it on sale on the Switch, either physically or digitally. This new studio is going to basically head up or be the foundation for Epic Games Brazil, as Epic Games does their world domination power play right now. And it sounds like they are immediately just going to start working on Fortnite, which, Dave, are you surprised that they acquired a studio and immediately put them on Fortnite?
Yeah. I mean, they're probably going to put something. Horizon Chase, are cars coming to Fortnite now?
I mean, that was my immediate thought of just oh, cool, they're probably going to add cars to Fortnite just for the hell of it. Because are there vehicles? There's probably some vehicles in Fortnite by now, but having a studio like this would probably motivate them to flesh out any vehicles or add vehicles. Just like when they acquired Harmonix, they were like, "Hey, you specialize in music games. We want to do more music things in Fortnite." So they acquired Harmonix. The next news story, feel like is the most Sega move you can do. Sega has acquired Rovio, the developer / publisher of Angry Birds, for $706 million. The deal is to bolster Sega's mobile and live service game offerings, though I haven't heard anyone really talk about Rovio in several years.
Yeah. I think this is one of those things where they thought they were bigger than they were, probably, I mean, Angry Birds I feel like Angry Birds at one point in time was coming pre-installed on iPhones.
I feel like it was, or at least Android phones. Some phones it was coming pre-installed, and they did release Angry Birds Star Wars games. There was licensed Angry Birds stuff several years ago. I'm assuming Sega, like they almost spent $1 billion on this, so they must have some return on it, but just nothing that we're paying attention to.
Yeah,
exactly.
or this is a data purchase and a mind purchase of like, okay, like they know how to do stuff that we don't know how to do, and that has a price. Mm-hmm. And if they're trying to get, if Sega has something cool in the works, possibly from a mobile standpoint or a live service standpoint, Rovio has data that tells them how to get people to sign into it every day, every week. This is, on a much smaller scale, but this is very similar to, why Sony bought Bungie. Like,
yeah, for a specific market, like
yep.
you buy Bungie for shooters and live service games. This one, mobile live service games.
Mm-hmm.
They apparently successful enough that still to this day that they were almost able to get $1 billion from Sega.
You gotta think, what would they have been like 4 years ago, 6 years ago if they would have sold? Like, it probably would have been around the same dollar amount, but at the time, $700 million 5 years ago would have been, people would have been like, what the?
They probably would have been $1 billion company. Like,
yeah.
If you think about just like in 2018, which that's 5 years ago now, I think that's when like the first or second Angry Birds movie came out. I mean, I know there's like, I think there's an Angry Birds TV show that's still going on one of the streaming platforms. So it's a big franchise still. And Sega now can, put Angry Birds. I don't know any of the character names in Angry Birds. They could put them in a Sonic thing now, or Sonic can cross over with them. So there's definitely things that like Sega probably will do. And again, this is the most Sega move because it feels like it's 5 years too late. But Sega went from a company that, I don't know if you remember, Dave, last year when we were talking about like who would acquire who, we kind of were guessing like Sega could be on that like acquisition list for one of the big companies potentially. Mm-hmm. And this just shows you Sega is just, they're pretty confident in what they have and they're acquiring more to boost everything they can. All right. Next story. Media Molecule's co-founder and Dreams director has left the studio. Mark Healy announced that he's leaving the studio, made the announcement on Twitter, said, after 17 years of co-birthing and building Media Molecule, I've decided it's time for me to fly the nest, set sail, and chart a new course. Today is my last day at Media Molecule. We talked about it last week. Dreams... It was announced that the support for it will end in September. There will be no more updates to it, and it will continue to exist. It just won't be supported. Dave, does this change any of the talk we had about Media Molecule last week, or does it seem like
no? It just solidifies it. Obviously, that Sony wants a different direction out of Media Molecule. I don't think this story is getting the attention it deserves. This is a co-founder of this studio. It's like one of the next stories you have down the list a little farther is getting more more hub, with whatever Joseph Staten's doing. Like when somebody leaves a Microsoft studio, it's like front page news, at least on my social feeds. Versus this one was just kind of like talked about a couple of headlines and then it had about an hour or two of thing and then it's gone. And it's like, I think this also kind of shows, I want to tentatively say this, but because I understand that not every game is for me, but this is almost a little bit of a point of Media Molecule's fall from grace. Little Big Planet was phenomenal. All of their games were phenomenal. Tearaway was great. Tearaway was one of the Vita's marquee blockbuster titles. That came out in 2013. It's 2023.
Well, I would say fall from grace almost sounds like it's their fault. I don't think it's their fault.
No, but
they're not a crown jewel anymore in Sony's cap or PlayStation, and that them leaving just. I think we talked about it last week. We threw out the idea of like, oh, are they just going to probably turn into an auxiliary studio, an artillery studio, assisting like maybe Jade Raymond's studio, or who are the Astrobot developers?
I don't remember.
Asobi?
Yeah, that sounds right.
Are they going to just assist them on Astrobot? And the co-founder, creative director leaving just kind of leans me in that direction of like, oh, are they just going to become a support studio? If you lose one of the creative directors, it sounds like you didn't need them anymore, or he felt like
or he wants to do A and Sony wants him to do B.
Exactly.
And he's like,
Exactly.
he's like, okay, well, I get it. Like, but this is the concern of, kind of circling back to the indie relationship a little bit. This is the concern that we've been talking about with Sony a little bit. Like God of War, Spider-Man, Horizon, like they're all like marquee, amazing games. But they don't have Sony first party doesn't have the mid tier anymore. And the reverse of it is Microsoft doesn't have the high tier and only has the mid tier. So, people look at, like there's people that like quality over quantity, and there's people that like quantity over quality. And then there's people that want both. And, I'm sure that Dreams was a quality game and a quality creative game, but it didn't produce the quantity that Sony wants.
Yeah. And it like we talked about it last week, Dreams felt like something that like they delivered what they promised, and it was up to PlayStation or Sony to get it in front of as many people as possible, and there just didn't seem to be much interest in that from PlayStation. Like, Dreams could have flourished during the pandemic if you really think about it, in terms of like, hey, here's a sandbox, create anything you want. I know it came out like a year before that, but Dreams could have capitalized on it if Sony wanted to, like really do a marketing push for it. They just kind of never did. There were rumors that maybe this person is looking at joining Rare, because
that would be ironic.
Yeah. So that apparently is floating out there, though there's no proof of that. Sounds more like
Rare Europe, UK based?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
For some reason, I thought they were Texas based. I don't know where I got that idea from.
They might have multiple studios, but their main one is in the UK.
Yeah, this is mom and dad fighting, like, and this is a divorce. Obviously, whatever. Either he wanted to keep Dreams going, or he wanted to make a second version of Dreams, or he wanted to make something
new.
And whatever new thing he presented, Sony's like, no, we want you to do this. Whether it's to your example, an auxiliary thing, or whether it's going back to Sackboy, or Jim Ryan's going, okay, what, asking the question that we know he's asking, tell me how you're going to sell 15 million copies of this game.
Or the Jim Ryan thing, how are you going to get a 99 on Metacritic?
Yeah. Well, I mean, we've heard that he wants blockbusters. He wants blockbusters. So, that's, what he's talking about. Like, we've heard all this discussion. Like, it all happened last week. I put it on the Facebook group this week or whatever of like, wow, and it's finding your niche and finding your thing. You and I go round and round about frame rates and console wars and exclusivities and Game Pass and all this stuff. And Nintendo's sitting over here in the corner going, okay, we're going to tell the same Zelda story for the 11th time, just a little different, but not much different. We're going to sell 20 million copies of this game, and it's going to be on 10-year-old hardware.
Dave, with this, I did not realize this, but the other co-founder, Kareem Atouni, announced in December they were leaving Media Molecule, so now you have both co-founders.
I didn't know that either. So.
Yeah, I didn't know either. It was at the very bottom of the article I pulled up from Video Games Chronicles. So yeah, no, I now I'm leaning even more of like, yeah, this. If a new studio gets formed by either one of them, I assume they're pulling a lot of talent from Media Molecule. Yeah. So I wonder what Media Molecule turns into. Yeah,
this is probably. I mean, it might be a little early to say, but this might be the end of when you see these aren't people that took over studios. These are two that found it together, and they're gone within 6 months. Like, that's bad.
And if they create something, there's going to be loyalists that are going to be like, all right, let's go. Like,
especially if they go together, that'll be like similar to our situation years ago.
Yeah, you end up
in a much different scale, but similar.
But yeah. But this could be a thing where Media Molecule might just be a name, kind of like how Activision went through some of the Call of Duty studios, to where like all the major people left those studios. They're around till this day, but they're not the same studios they once were because certain people left. BioWare is one of those studios that have had so many people leave at the top level that what does it even mean to be a BioWare game at this point?
Yeah.
Okay, so going from someone leaving a company, we have someone joining a different company. The Halo Infinite head of creative, Joseph Staten, is joining Netflix to make a AAA game. For those that don't know, Staten has basically worked on almost every Halo game. It's a former Bungie employee who then went to 343 Studios and bounced between Microsoft here and there. Basically wrote the first 2 Halo games, and then wrote and co-creative directed Destiny 1 before joining the Halo Infinite team. So this is a big veteran moving over to Netflix. There's no details on what game is being made or if a new studio is being formed, because Netflix has acquired a ton of studios over the last year, so we don't know if they're just gonna like pop them into that. But Netflix they're serious about video games for now. As a company bleeding money, they're really into spending money because video games are expensive.
Joseph Staten's in the same bubble as Amy Hennig for me right now. He was brought in to save Halo Infinite, and he didn't. So it's been a long time since he's had a marquee hit, and I don't know if I would want to sign my name to co-writing Destiny 1.
Yeah, that but being a like creative director, like you have to. There's at least a track record that it makes sense that a Netflix would want to be in business with this person.
Yeah, he's got an amazing resume. Like he's got an amazing resume, and it gets to a certain point in time where, like, you know, like we talked about Media Molecule, like maybe Halo just doesn't carry the weight that it used to carry 10 years ago, 12 years ago, 15 years ago, or whatever. And you know, like it's not. It's more of a name that it is. You know, it is what it is. But he's, you know, going back to if you're talking about going back to Destiny 1 being maybe the last successful thing that he put hands on, you're 9-10 years out as well. So my same criticism for him would be my same criticism I have for Media Molecule. It's 2023. The last cool thing you did was, you know, my college graduate son was in middle school.
yeah, and it's definitely one of those things where like he joined Halo Infinite, I believe, kind of late.
Yeah.
Not super late, still there a couple years, but definitely wasn't there at the beginning. But definitely is. There's a lot to prove, and I don't know if working with Netflix to make a AAA game is going to be a good starting point.
I can't think of the name, but this is like when this big name joined Stadia. See how that worked out? Like, you know,
Jade Raymond joined Stadia.
But before then, like the person,
Harrison.
Yeah, that was like, it was such a big deal that he joined Stadia, and it's like, okay, well, just to like similar to what you said, like, okay, like you got him, okay, A, what are you gonna do with him? B, what, you know, who are you going to give him to work with? And then what kind of money does he get? Like, you know, I mean, what kind of budget does he get to make this game? And, you know, like, yeah, sure, Netflix is saying AAA, but I have a hard time believing Netflix is going to make a AAA thing when they haven't made a single A thing yet.
Yes, well, they made a lot. They made a lot of mobile games, and they've licensed a lot of mobile games to come to our platforms. But like,
this game has to, whether we like it or not, this game has to run on Netflix, which means it has to run on a streaming platform.
Yeah, and their streaming stuff could do 4K. Really nice, but can it do no input lag? Like, you're getting someone who's really
this is going to be 30 frames a second too. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, you're getting someone who is known for first-person shooters.
Yeah.
To make a AAA game, whatever that means to Netflix, because like you brought up Stadia.
You know how many people will lose their mind if they have to in order to play a Netflix game, if they have to download the whole thing.
Yeah, they probably would. But like, you know, to your point, you bring up Stadia. Stadia was like, well, let's get in the game business. And then as they hired developers and studios, they were like, wait, how much does it cost to make a game? Yeah. And how long does it take to produce a product? And I think Netflix will learn very quickly if they are actually going to try and deliver a AAA game of like, how many tens of millions of dollars is it going to take? What do you mean it's going to take several years to make?
And is whatever he makes as an IP, you know, whether it's a pre-owned IP or a brand new IP or whatever, like the primary focus of it's going to be like, I don't know, like it's going to be Netflix. Like, do you see Netflix making a game that releases on PlayStation?
I mean, technically, Oxenfree 2 is.
But was that in active development before Netflix acquired them?
At least like 6 months in development. So not
I'm just saying,
like,
from the point, like,
stop.
I mean, I obviously, I'm sure Staten had extensive negotiations before he went here, but all of which we'll never know. But like, I would assume that the primary platform he's developing on is going to be Netflix is Netflix,
I
and
don't know. Netflix runs on PlayStation, so
okay. I mean, yeah, I guess, but I don't know. I just get concerned like what their definition of AAA is anymore, because like I feel like this is a game that's gonna have to run on my phone.
No, and that's going to be a big thing of, like, I'm sure Netflix knows if, I would hope Netflix would have smart people in place at certain points to be like, hey, if we want this game to sell well or be successful, it's going to have to release on other platforms. But the primary thing is to make sure it runs on the Netflix app. And that's going to be the tricky part of.
But I also don't see
this
like? any game he releases increasing Netflix subscriptions. I don't.
No, and that's been a whole confusing thing. I think they're up to like 90 games on Netflix by the end of the year is what they're hoping. I think there's around like 40 right now, and they're all just like random mobile games that they've like licensed. So I don't know what who knows, like this is someone who has been making first person shooters, but what if they just have an idea for a puzzle game? You know, you don't know, and you don't want to lock someone into like one specific genre, but AAA makes me think we're gonna get something big ish, but it's just a matter of.
But it also has to run on my phone.
Yes, and that's what we have to come back around to, of just like it has to run on a phone. I guess it can stream. You know, they have the technology.
Yeah, but on my phone means touchscreen.
Unless you're streaming it, and then you can Bluetooth to a controller. But that might be too much of an ask for the average Netflix user to do. Especially if it's like, hey, just use your PlayStation controller on your phone. It's just like, well, I'm just going to use this PlayStation controller on my PlayStation. Put the game out on my PlayStation.
Yep.
And yeah, I don't know what this is going to be. I encourage anyone to just take that money Netflix seems to be throwing out. Like if you're a developer or something, you might as well take the money while you can. Yeah. So like I'm not shaming anybody for signing a video game deal from Netflix. I just don't expect anything to actually come from those deals. So Netflix might learn the hard way, or who knows, maybe in a year we're talking about like, hey, remember when Netflix outdid Stadia? I doubt we're going to talk like that, but you never know. All right. Last news story. It's a lot of downer news stories this week. American McGee revealed on their Patreon that EA has rejected their Alice sequel idea. Dave right now is looking at me like, what are you talking about?
Pretty much.
Back in the day, 360 PS3 era, American McGee had made Alice and Alice Madness Returns cult classic, cult hit games like that are like a dark twist on the Alice in Wonderland franchise. American McGee has been running a Patreon the last couple years to basically work on a pitch and a development Bible and blueprint to present to EA to see if a third game in the series can be made. EA apparently looked at the proposal, the Bible, the game dev Bible that they talked about, and after a couple weeks, they just turned the deal down and said they are not interested in making a sequel to this cult franchise that they own, and they are basing that off analysis of the IP, what they think the IP is worth, and the return of investment from that IP, the market conditions, and also the blueprint that was basically presented to them. American McGee then said since EA is like, hey, we have no interest in doing this, the IP is not strong enough, basically, American McGee asked if he would be able to acquire the rights or license the rights to the game, and EA apparently said, the IP is too valuable for us to part ways or license it out to you. So they kind of dicked them around a little bit of just being like, hey, this IP is not valuable. Then also on the other hand said, it's way too valuable. This basically led to American McGee retiring from game development and said they just have no desire to pursue like any other development, whether it's a new idea or trying to reiterate on this idea in a different way, and had to come out and basically ask the fans of the Alice games to stop asking questions and stop asking about this game, because he's over it. He's done with it. If you have any questions, direct that at EA. Ask EA why they won't release this or why they won't fund this game or allow anyone else to fund this game. There's also some frustration because EA is licensing out the IP for a TV show to another company. So they're still willing to work with some. So it's kind of hard to tell if this is just they just didn't like his idea or if EA's just being a corporation. But Dave, I just said a lot of words.
I think it's more EA's still in the we want to be acquired business, and the more IPs they own, the more valuable of an acquisition they are.
Yeah, especially
that's what I really think the bottom line of it comes down to. Or there is some other form of negotiation going on, even if it's not for EA entirely. It's for maybe a bundle of EA's IPs, which this one could be affected by.
Yeah. And I also think there could be a deal in place with that production company working on a TV show that's like, hey, can you please not release any video game unless you talk to us or until after this TV show?
Or it has something to do with if the TV, there is some agreement of if the TV show hits XYZ quota, we want to make a game.
Yeah. Yeah. Or remake the first 2 games.
Right.
But this one, I like the Alice games. They're pretty cool. I don't know how a sequel would have worked. Like, I know how it would have worked. I read the design Bible, basically.
Yeah, 15 years later? Like, come on.
So there was interesting things like, so on the Patreon that has been running for a couple years, fans of the series have been funding basically this developer's like research and planning. And at the end of the Patreon, they released the game Bible to everyone, and it was like a couple hundred pages.
Okay.
So there were cool ideas in there that a new game could have come from. But like I mentioned earlier, EA might have just been like, that's a cool idea, but like, we don't want to go down this development path with you specifically.
It's not the direction branch that we're going on with the show.
Yeah, exactly. So. It's like, hey, the show's going to start from the first game, and then you want to make a third game. That doesn't line up. Or they're like, hey, you're just a single person. You're not a whole studio. Like, we don't have a studio we can give you right now to do this. Yeah. Or the money to finance you building a new studio. So, bummer of news story. But, yeah, EA's going to EA. Like, this is what they do. They're just going to sit on a bunch of IP and frustrate fans. But, hey, Battlefield will be fixed eventually, Dave.
Right.
One day.
Well, actually, the ironic part, like, we're getting, like, Jedi Survivor's coming out, like, next week, in 2 weeks, and then they actually just released another trailer for like an EA original game from a brand new studio, like Immortals of Avon, if I'm saying that name right.
I saw
it's like it's like a first-person magic shooting game, like a you know, and it looks really, really good, and it's supposed to be coming out in July. So like, somewhat of the course of direction when EA gets away from Battlefield has actually been, you know, decent.
Yeah, we'll see how long that lasts, because eventually they're going to want to do Battlefield again.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm looking forward to Jedi Survivor. This new game, Immortal game, you know, immediately jumped on my radar for this summer. So it's not all doom and gloom there, but yeah, it's definitely some interesting decisions, and you know, like I unfortunately don't have a whole lot of, you know, to add to this story, because I have no recollection of this game whatsoever. So
it's a cool game. I would say it's worth checking out. I think it might be backwards compatible on the Xbox. Okay. But yeah, no, just kind of a bummer that the developers just been like discouraged and is just like, I'm retiring from the game industry. But we'll move on, Dave, to our next segment. We were just talking about this as well. Like a week
yeah, this has been rumored and now it's been confirmed. So in terms of what's delayed, Suicide Squad is delayed until 2024. I believe they're saying like February of 2024. So that's a big delay and an irritating delay from a personal level, because this game was supposed to come out like in a month. Yes. And so they delayed it within a 6-week window. So and I don't think I guess based on everything I was reading from other people, it doesn't sound like it's a big enough delay to redo anything significant. So I don't know what's going on with this game, and frankly, when I first heard about it, I was initially kind of really hyped up about it, and now I just don't care.
Yeah, no, this has been like a roller coaster, I feel, for you, in terms of just like, I don't really care about this game. You see first set of gameplay and you're like, actually kind of interested in it. Mm-hmm. And then we get a delay.
And a delay. And a delay.
And a delay.
And a delay.
Yeah. and it's a 9-month delay, so like a lot of people talked about, that's not enough to change anything major. It just sounds like it will hopefully lead to a less buggy game. So it sounds like the game needed a lot more polish and they wanted a bug-free thing. This kind of reminds me of Cyberpunk, though of course it did not work out for Cyberpunk.
Yeah. Well, this is the same conversation. It's kind of ironic though, like with Joseph Staten and with Media Molecule, like the last thing that Rocksteady released was Arkham Knight. In
2015, right?
Yeah.
2015.
So, I mean, you're talking about 8+ years. Like, this is, in gaps in time gaps like that for studios, you're talking Last Guardian level gaps of development time.
Yeah, I wonder. Like,
I'm not saying that, I'm sorry, I'm not saying Suicide Squad's been in development for 8 years. We don't really know how long it's been in development for.
Sounds like other games were thrown out before they decided on.
Yeah, Suicide Squad. Why were they thrown out, and why was this one picked?
Yeah, I really hope that this 9 months are used to make a very. You can't even promise a bug-free game because it's a live service game with multiplayer, which means you're gonna have people.
But just fall on the sword right now and be transparent. I said this about Cyberpunk as well. Like, just do a monthly show of what you're doing, what you're changing. Use the state of play thing of what you showed and be like, okay, look, this is what we showed. This is what we didn't like. This is what we're changing. This is part of how it's looking. Like, what do you have to lose right now? Like, just on the 30th of every month, just say, hey, we're going to give you an update on Suicide Squad of what we're doing, what we're changing, what we're building. Get people like, oh, I like that, I don't like that.
There's 5 members of the Suicide Squad. Once a month, have a stream on each individual character and
get
be
these
like,
people understanding what get your buyers understanding what they're getting into. Like, I don't. It's either it feels like right now in the gaming world, it's either companies want to keep everything so close to their chest and not tell anything, or they tell us everything and we're like, okay, well, now all the cool stuff has been revealed. Like, why do I even bother playing? And like, or it's like, now you're hiding stuff from me. Like, what are you trying to hide from me? Like, there has to be a balance in between. And
I'm tired of them not being open until shit hits the fan. Yeah. After the game comes out and it's a mess, and they come hand in hand. Like, hey guys, we're going to be open from here on out.
Or they waited like 3 weeks after Schreier told us what we already knew.
Yeah, that's a crazy thing. We were talking about this 3 weeks ago, and I was just like, if they don't respond to this within a certain amount of time, the game's delayed, and they waited a really long time to keep their fan base in the darkness of like, oh shit, which makes me think that there was like some heavy back and forth going between developers and publishers.
I mean, the counterpoint is EA announced that Immortals game like last week, and it comes out in July. So you're talking about a 90-day window of announcement to release. Yes, the game's been briefly talked about before, but officially a reveal trailer and a date. And now within that time frame, you have a state of play with a date, and now you're within. I like I've been saying for a long time, like 90 days minimum. They didn't even hit 60.
Yeah, no, it was supposed to come out at the end of next month, right? Like May 26th,
like May 27th, yeah, something like that, yeah.
So the fact that they're just like pulling a rug, like you already, like they're really banking on Rocksteady fans like supporting this game.
Yeah, guess what? That 22-year-old Rocksteady fan is 34 years old with a kid.
Yeah, no, and specifically. I want to know, I hope Warner Brother knows that I don't think there are as many Rocksteady fans as there are Arkham Asylum fans, or Arkham City fans. Exactly. So I think they're like trying to be like, oh, if you like the Arkham games, that means you like Rocksteady. And it's not necessarily the case, because all we know of Rocksteady are those Arkham games, and now they're doing something different, which means you're going to lose people there. And it's also Suicide Squad, so it's not even like an IP that people like
and it's
really
live service.
care about. and it's a live service game, and they've never done a live service game. They've never done a multiplayer game. It's a lot to ask of like the fan base, and we're talking about a fan base for a game that's not out yet. So you already have people that aren't like fully on board, though there are crazy people that are already like Suicide Squad is the greatest game ever, but those people are crazy because the game's not out yet. But in 9 months, there's not much they can do. Like, they're not going to change. This game is not going to come out and be like, hey, guess what? It's not a live service game anymore. Like, that stuff's already planned and budgeted. This is now just like, we're hoping to have as little bugs possible when we do launch. And you have to hope that they honestly should have announced this and then been like, hey, there's a beta in October. Or something to like get people like, hey, beta in October or demo in November, something to like by that time. Or to your point, put out a schedule of like, hey, we are going to be talking about this game soon and it's happening on this day. But instead it's just like, we'll see you February 2nd.
I don't know.
It's we'll see what happens with this game. I wasn't very confident in it, but I'm even more so not confident in this one.
All right. So that's all that was delayed as of now. So what we're playing and watching. I think that for the most part, we'll have a decent conversation back and forth because I believe that you have... I saw the Mario Brothers movie again because apparently my wife volunteered me to take my nephews and Owen. So I saw that for a second time, and I think we both played Xdefiant, and that's kind of it for me. So I guess most people heard my thoughts. I guess your thoughts on the Mario Brothers movie.
Yeah, so I thought it was good. Like, I don't think it was like the greatest animated movie ever, but I don't think it was terrible. I know I was probably most worried about Chris Pratt, and he didn't really talk that much in a movie. I felt like they kind of, I think they knew what they were getting into with like, hey, Chris Pratt's not going to be great, but he's not going to be terrible.
Did you forget that he was the voice of Mario while you were watching?
I would only remember when Mario would get loud. Okay. Like when he was just talking normally, it was fine. When he was delivering like the iconic Mario lines, that's when I'm like, oh, that's fucking Chris Pratt fucking that up. Yeah. But I think they knew that going into this, and that's why Peach does a lot of the talking for a good chunk of the movie, it felt. But overall, like I loved all the Easter eggs. That was fun. Like so many in it. Like I don't care about seeing the movie again, but once it hits like it's Universal, so it hit Peacock or whatever in like 6 months, I'll probably watch it again just to see like Easter eggs. But overall, I was happy with it. I didn't think it needed a post-credit scene, but it had one. But yeah, Chris Pratt isn't terrible in it. I wouldn't say he's good in it, but you at least aren't going to be bothered by his presence in the movie. And again, my whole thing with Chris Pratt is I'm just tired of seeing him because he's everywhere.
That's why you could just get to hear him. You don't have to see him.
Yeah, it would be great.
But I still feel, I mean, I don't know, do you agree that Jack Black did the best job?
Oh yeah, Jack Black was the star of this movie. Yep. Though I was a little disappointed because a lot of people were hyping up his song, and I feel like you just didn't get a lot of time for that song. It was like I feel really like
the stuff they've been releasing on YouTube is like a longer version of it. It's different. Yeah. So I don't know. It seems like that was a little bit better, but
yeah. But Jack Black was fantastic in it. I hope we see more Jack Black in the next Mario movie because this thing's about to hit $1 billion by next week. So like we will be getting another Mario game or a Mario movie. So I'm happy about that. I want to see where they take things. And again, I couldn't be too upset. It's a kid's movie. So it's not like it was really like gonna be offensive or anything.
And there was no epic storytelling twist like cliffhangers.
You can't come out of the Mario movie and be like, man, they really should have did more at the story. Because one, it's a kid movie, and two, there's not much story in Mario. Like there's not much you can do story wise for Mario, and I think they did a good enough job to give you a story. Though it did have like the kid movie thing of like things that start happening, like Mario shows up in Mushroom Kingdom and it's like, all right, here we go. We're doing it. Here's a movie. So like they're really quick in getting the ball rolling there. But yeah, it was fine. It was fine. Don't know if it's worthy of like buying like a Blu-ray when it comes out, but
that's the difference between having a 7-year-old son and you not.
Mm-hmm. No, but I like collecting movies. Like usually if I really like a movie, I will buy it, but I don't think it's quite there yet. Though the Steelbook is nice. There's a really nice Steelbook. But probably not enough for me to pick it up.
When in 6 months, when Michael's walking around the store, you're gonna randomly see him post something in Discord about collections of, it was on the shelf, I bought it, I didn't expect to see it.
I'm really trying to cut down on movie collecting. Especially, man, I bought too many movies when I was a teen, and it just feels cringy now when I look at my selection of like movies from like 10 years ago.
Our live streamers, our live stream watchers can't see it based on our background right now, but you have an extensively better display of your X-Men collection than you did in your old place. At least from what I can see on my screen. So.
Yes, I have a whole Cyclops X-Men collection that only Dave can see, because I think you can only see part of a skateboard and Miles Morales on Twitch.
Yeah. All right, so I guess let's have a little bit of a conversation about Xdefiant. So I released, we released interviews that I was able to take care of. So big thank you to Ubisoft. I got to play Xdefiant a little early, as well as Michael's trying to tilt his camera for everybody else. I got to play Xdefiant a little bit before everybody else got to play the closed beta. We were had the ability to give out some codes to some of our community members, so thank you guys for asking for them and using them. And then I was able to do an interview with the community manager and some of the gameplay investors. So if you haven't listened to those are on the feed. They're a separate thing, should have the Xdefiant logo and everything on it. So please feel free to give that a listen, as well as I say all the time, like give me some feedback. Let me know, do you like it? Did you hate it? Be respectful, but if you hated it, please give me something you want me to do a little bit better. I'm always looking to improve my interview skills as much as possible.
As opposed to being like, I hate it. Just be like, hey, it would have been cool if you would have.
And then if you don't like Xdefiant, then don't listen to it. Or if you don't have an interest in it, or don't come to me like, I didn't like the topic. Okay, like that's not helpful.
Oh yeah, that's frustrating when they're like, I didn't like the topic, or you should have talked about this game, or it's like, no, that's not how that works.
But I'd be curious. So I felt the thing that I want to say is that I felt that the movement in the closed beta was faster than the movement in the version that I got to play earlier. I felt like my character moved a little bit faster because I was concerned about. I felt that the character was heavy. And so I was able to play this on console, on PS5, and I have played it on my PC. I did stream it as well, so it's on the stream replays. I like it, but I don't see it as something that would be coming into my normal rotation.
Same. Definitely, it has some good things going for it, but I don't know if it has enough that it would break through a rotation like other games have for me in the past. Movement felt okay for me. I played in I think it was an alpha previously, and then I played in the beta. But I've been playing like the lighter characters, so it could be a more difference in that. I will say, Dave, it wasn't until you tweeted that Xdefiant is a love letter to Ubisoft franchises that I realized that Xdefiant featured Ubisoft franchises, because I don't think they do a good enough job of telling you that unless you go into some menus.
And for me, it's been like the stuff that they're telling it to are games that I have enjoyed. Watch Dogs 2, I really liked. Ghost Recon for a while, I enjoyed. Far Cry, I enjoyed. The Division, I loved. So like when you go into an arena, like when you're in the basketball arena map, like that's from The Division.
And see, as someone who's only played some of those games, that didn't hit me. And also, like when I first played this past weekend, I hit play and jumped into a match right away, and then just picked a character. It wasn't until I was in a different menu to like set up your loadouts that I was just like, oh, it says Watch Dogs there. Oh shit, it says Ghost Recon there. Yeah, and I'm just like, oh, they could have presented this a little differently.
it's almost like it needs kind of like, and I feel like any free to play games in like I felt with this about Overwatch, and like it almost needs, and I think Overwatch is actually one of the few companies that did Overwatch 1 that did it well from the outside perspective. You obviously played significantly more than I did, but like a cutscene, a 90-second cutscene about the faction, about the map that you're on. Yeah, like anything like that.
Something.
So, yeah.
Because I don't care about cosmetics unless I care about the characters. Something I learned in Overwatch, and they haven't really given me a reason to care about any of those characters. I know that you could just use it as like an avatar that just happens to be dressed up from that Ubisoft universe, but I don't know if that's enough. You know, like especially for like a potential live service game.
Yeah,
like,
and I was trying to play some of it with Johnny as a boy, and it wasn't working. Like the grouping up with friends wasn't working. But he was watching some of the stream too, and he noticed that he's like, all the top performers are this female character, and he was asking questions about like, is it maybe the hitbox on the character, a smaller hitbox and stuff like that. Time to kill is extremely fast if you're in the correct range. I think the game has tremendous potential, but I still want to, but I think unless it's been patched within the last 24 hours as of recording the show, I have to look on their Discord as well. I think it's actually shut down for consoles right now because
it's back up. It went back up.
Is.
I want to say Monday afternoon.
Okay, because it was at one point in time over the weekend shut down for consoles because of something they weren't able to patch, and it pretty much, they said it without saying it, of like, we can't patch this because nobody's in the Microsoft and Sony offices to patch it. Like,
yeah.
So like I haven't really had the chance to play with friends. Have you played with friends?
Just once, and it worked fine enough.
Like,
but I believe.
But like, how many were you? Was it just one person?
Just one person.
Okay, because I think it might be fun if you have 3 or 4 people.
It could be, unless y'all suck. Then it might not be fun. You need
if you suck, then you're just getting rolled together. But yeah, exactly. I do feel like with the objective, it does have a very heavier focus on objectives over kills. And I do feel like you can, and I haven't played as much arena shooters as you have, but I do feel like you can change the landscape. You could be down 450 to 100 and 190, and you can come back and win.
Yeah,
like
I noticed that with Occupy, which is the one where you're going to the moving target, and I think you have to hit 250. There was a couple games where the other team went up like 90-0, and then I don't know if there's like some rubber banding or something that happened, but the game ended like 250 to 225.
Yeah,
to where
or somebody finally gets enough to occupy it, and then once they get the objective, then it can snowball, which I think is a delicate balance of where, like, if they can really make an objectively sound shooter, which so many companies go after and they can never do it. But if they, or at least in my opinion, I haven't seen it yet. But if you can make an objectively sound, a play the objective game, that could be that niche that you're trying to get into. But you just got to figure out some way to make sure that people understand it's an objective based.
Yeah. What do you think about the map design? Because some of the maps I feel like there's too much going on. Like
they're too big. Yeah. Or they're too big, or too many corridors, too much. Yeah, like too. But at the same time, like it did feel rewarding to flank somebody.
Oh yeah, it definitely did, and I will admit
but getting flanked sucked.
The time to respawn is at a good level to where if someone does tag you, you can respawn and get to them relatively quickly. Despite
the revenge badge is definitely something that popped up a couple times for me. So
I will say it's hard to tell because it is a beta. Like, I had a problem with the last beta for this. I think the throwing sucks. Like,
okay. Well, I feel like the objective markers are too small.
Yeah, the objective markers are too small, which is an easy fix, luckily. Yep. The throwing mechanics, something's off about it.
Throwing crap has always felt terrible in Ubisoft games.
Okay, yeah, because it just feels either too light to where you can't figure out the distance it's going to go.
It feels like Uncharted 1.
Yes, yeah. It definitely feels... It's hard to explain, but like when you're controlling it, it just feels hollow, like you're throwing paper, even though you're just holding a controller. And also it seems to be glitched. There's been a couple times where I throw a grenade and it just freezes in front of me.
Yeah, and there was definitely a lot of beta moments in it of like characters kind of moving around, and I was seeing, I don't know how you prevent it either. I don't know if you saw this. I was having a hard time, and I haven't played against this in a while, but the strafing jumper.
Mm-hmm.
like is very annoying, is a very much of a pet peeve to me when I'm shooting at somebody and they're strafing and teabagging and jumping all at the same time.
That's just how Twitch shooters are.
Yeah, I know. That's me being 40 next month. So
no, I have the same thing of just like I tend to be boots on the ground when I play games or shooters. And then also like another thing that I'm assuming is just a bug, but sometimes the shooting feels good and then halfway through the clip it doesn't. Like, I don't know how to. I had that mess. It.
Johnny had me mess with the sensitivity a little bit. That helped.
You know, it literally just feels like the controller just like
aim assist like unattaches or something.
Yeah, and it just like your shots have impact, and then towards the end, it's just like, oh, my gun's shooting, but it just doesn't look like it's doing anything, or it's not rumbling anymore either. So there's a lot of things that are easy fixes for this game, and I think it's a competent shooter. I just don't know if it's going to be able to find a market. Yeah. But I do.
I'm happy that they're doing multiple betas. I'm happy that their Discord is very, very active, toxic but active.
And video games.
Yeah. And I actually think technically right now it's a good thing that it doesn't have a date. Like I think it's a really good thing that it doesn't have a date.
And then the beta is going until like the 23rd, right?
Yeah. So a couple something more, like through the weekend.
Next Sunday. Or this Sunday. But yeah, I think
and I could see that extended a couple days too because of the downtime for consoles.
Yeah, they had mentioned that like they might add time to it. I will say like I think there is something that could be here. I need to know what Ubisoft is expecting. Yeah. If they're just expecting to have an Ubisoft type multiplayer game, I think that's going to be fine. And what I mean by that is a For Honor sort of experience, not a
if they're trying to be in the aura of Fortnite, you ain't there.
Yeah, and that's the thing that scares me of just like this isn't a Call of Duty killer. I don't care what the weird Twitter people.
It's not going to affect Warzone at all.
Yeah, but if Ubisoft's happy by just being in the game, by just participating in the market, then I think this game will be fine.
How did you feel about progression? I think it's too slow.
It is slow to the point where I just didn't give a shit about it at a certain point. Like I was interested,
I don't care about it either because it doesn't carry over. You could carry over 10 cosmetic things, so nothing.
No, but because of its slowness, I just stopped caring about it. Period. Yeah. And the loadout stuff too. I didn't really.
Right, and I think that even in the beta, if they turn progression up 300%, and they were transparent about turning it up 300%, because they want you to mess with, like, I would really want to see what a fully attached gun feels like. Like, I want that, but I can't get there.
Yeah, especially if it's really good. Yeah, that if we get to experience that in the beta, then we're more likely to pick up. At least
I'll feel like I want to get there. Oh, I really want to get that grip because I know that grip's going to affect my recoil pattern.
Yeah, and right now it's taking too long, so I'm just going to play Occupy and just do that.
Yeah, so I don't know. I mean, like, I get it because then you don't want, like, I get the progression speed up thing in the beta. I don't, but in the real game I do get it because you don't, like, then it becomes like, oh, you just reward the people that play this game a shit ton versus like the guy that plays it once a week. But that guy that plays it once a week is still getting punished versus the people that play it a crap because they'll have more stuff in during a season. Like right now, like based on what I saw playing the closed beta, like I don't know if I want to deal with a battle pass every 90 days.
No,
because of how much of a slog it looks like, But
yeah, especially then you're going to be encouraged to buy the level skips and all that just to get the most out of your battle pass because it takes so long.
Yeah.
But I said it earlier, most of our issues are fixable. Relatively easy fixes. So again, like Ubisoft does have something here. I just hope their expectations are in check.
Yeah.
For this.
And by the time you're listening to this, I don't have any other like massive inside information on this, but apparently February 20th or April 20th, 420 is Division Day. So they're hovering around there's some rumors or hopes of hearing stuff about Heartland and the mobile game as well as even content for Division 2. So if there's any opportunity to cover any of that or talk about that, I'll post that when I see that, because I'm kind of really hoping that we get something about Heartland, because we really haven't seen much about it. That's another free-to-play thing.
Would that fuck up Xdefiant if they're like, hey, Heartland comes out in like a month?
I think it'd push Xdefiant back.
Yeah, but like,
I also don't think Heartland's coming out without any kind of beta.
You don't think it could be shadow dropped?
No, not without a beta. Not unless, to your point, they're going to be like, oh, we're going to do a 6-month, we're going to shadow drop this in early access for 6 months, and then take 2 months off and release the real thing or whatever. Like, that'd be the only way.
But then that destroys anything Xdefiant's trying to build up towards.
Agreed. So, especially since there's division stuff in Xdefiant.
That's so fucking weird, man.
Yeah,
I don't know what
because
they're doing over there.
no matter what, Heartland's going to do it better.
Those crazy French Canadians, man.
Yeah, but I mean, do you agree? Like, whatever Heartland is going to be better than whatever's in Xdefiant from a division standpoint.
From a division standpoint, yes. Like,
I mean, the biggest difference I could see, though, is that I feel that Heartland will be third person.
Yeah, but even then, like, the idea that division content is in Xdefiant, it's just like, guess where those division fans are going? They're going to go to Heartland. They're not going to go to Defiant.
Yeah, that's true. So, all right. So no questions or comments today. Mostly for time for Michael and myself. But again, if you guys think of anything, please send it to us. Post it in Discord. There's a specific channel in Discord. You can post them in the Facebook group. You can post them on Twitter using hashtag AskDigitalDays. They're in the Discord channel under hashtag AskDigitalDays. And then you can just post them in Facebook. Typically, if you actually post like a question, Facebook marks it as a question. So that's where we can see that. So please consider doing so. Again, don't have to wait for any of us to ask for them. Anything that comes up is always, is always fair game. Doesn't have to be video game related. Doesn't have to be food related. Whatever. It can be anything. So, and then the spotlight, just like I mentioned earlier, please consider listening to the Xdefiant stuff. As always, with the feedback is always appreciative there. Again, thank you to Ubisoft for giving us the opportunity to do so. I truly love interviewing people, and I love the reaction on their faces. That's the coolest thing I get is like they're like, oh damn, this guy actually played the game. So like, this person knows what they're talking about. Like that's always like super enjoyable, especially like when the recordings go off and they're like, they find out like, they'll talk to us a little bit like through PR, and I have a really good relationship with PR, and they're asking me about stuff about my job and things like that. And then after the end of the interview, they're like, so you don't do this primarily? I'm like, no. And they're like, oh, I'm like, well, you're pretty good at it for not doing it primarily. So I
usually get, that explains why you know so much.
Yeah. So yeah, like sometimes it's after the gambit of them talking to like 6 or 7 or 9 journalists in a row that are more just trying to get like a cool one-liner out of them or something sneaky out of them. I'm like, hey, I just really want to talk about like why your progression is so slow. Like I want to play, and they're like, oh, okay, we want to have a real conversation. Like, so I still have that clip recorded. That. Yeah,
it's the PR people that kind of give you the look of like, that's not on our agenda. It's just
I have that clip. I have that clip saved on my phone. I can't remember his name off the top of my head right now, but he was doing something for Red Storm in the Division, and I did a couple softball questions at an E3 interview. And then I asked a question on recording. He's like, "Oh fuck, you know what you're talking about?" Like, and he's like, or something like, "Oh, you played the game a lot." And the PR guy's like, "Yeah, he has." And then Terry was like, his name was Terry. He's like, "You should have told me before we started." Like,
yeah, that was my favorite part of E3. Is just like I remember having a beer with Herman Holst from Gorilla, and just talking about like how much Killzone I play, and there was like oh shit. And then, oh shit, kind of reaction of just like, oh no, what am I gonna? Where's this conversation going?
Yeah.
So that stuff's always fun, which is why we need to go to PAX.
Yes, absolutely. So we should look into that. So, but yes, the spotlight is on Xdefiant interview. Please listen to it, download it, review it. If I think Spotify lets you review things individually, so do that, please. So, yeah. And then you can follow us on our socials. The main account is at Digital Days Pod. Michael's is at the first MJC, 1ST. Mine is at Good Dave Hunt. Facebook group, Discord server, and Patreon are all linked in the show notes. There's some Teespring stuff in there. I will say a slight hint of if you have any tangible desire to get anything that is currently in the Teespring store, please do so, because I'm not saying in 3 months or 6 months or 8 months that there's going to be some changes, but eventually there will be some changes in the next year. And some of that stuff might be worth having, because there might be a little bit of changes coming. So so go ahead and consider picking that up. I probably need to pick up something because I'm getting a little bigger. But please check out those links in the show notes. Again, like we mentioned, follow us on Twitter, follow us on social media, share the show, review the show, all that stuff. And I hope everyone has a great week. Keep moving forward.
Don't be a dick. See ya.